In 1880, John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil controlled 90% of all oil refining in the United States. He achieved this in less than a decade without inventing a superior product, without discovering more oil, and without any technological advantage whatsoever. He did it entirely through 4 specific mechanisms that have since been copied by every major monopolist in history, including the companies that currently control your search results, your social media feed, and your online shopping. In 1863, John D. Rockefeller began his assault on the oil industry not with a drill, but with a ledger. At a battered desk in Cleveland, he opened the red-covered notebook he called Ledger A and started recording every cent that moved through his first refinery. Each line, from crude oil purchases to freight charges to the Erie Railroad to wages for barrel makers, became a data point in a private system of cost calculation. Rockefeller's background as a bookkeeper shaped his approach. He tracked the price of crude at 50 cents a gallon, noted rail freight at 3 cents per barrel, and calculated net profit margins as low as 2%. This relentless accounting did more than keep the books. It revealed, in granular detail, the true cost of every barrel, allowing Rockefeller to set his selling price just above marginal cost. He could see, with mathematical clarity, exactly how low he could go before rivals would bleed. Ledger A was not just a record, it was a weapon. Through these pages, Rockefeller glimpsed a new kind of power, the ability to anticipate and outmaneuver competitors not through invention, but through foresight and financial discipline. What began as habit would soon become a strategy for total domination. In January 1872, Standard Oil launched its first open attack on the Pittsburgh refiners. The company placed advertisements in the Cleveland Daily Leader, offering kerosene at 70 cents a gallon, 2 cents below its own calculated cost of production. For nearly a month, Rockefeller's agents sold oil at a loss, absorbing financial pain that no independent could match. Internal directives, preserved in the Rockefeller archive, instructed local managers to maintain these losses until the last rival either shuttered or sold. Ida Tarbell's account describes the panic that swept through Pittsburgh's refineries as prices collapsed. Competitors attempted to hold out, but the math was merciless. Every barrel shipped at these rates deepened their losses. Within 29 days, several independents had capitulated. Some closed their doors. Others, unable to withstand the hemorrhage, sold out to Standard Oil at a fraction of their value. The deliberate sacrifice of profit was not an error. It was a calculated weapon, wielded with precision to eliminate resistance and clear the field for monopoly control. Philadelphia became the next battleground. In 1880, Standard Oil unleashed a price offensive that echoed the tactics seen in Pittsburgh. Newspaper advertisements across the city announced kerosene at 9 cents a gallon, 2 cents below the company's own recorded cost of production. The Carroll refinery, once a formidable independent, watched as its market vanished almost overnight. Cost ledgers from Standard's Philadelphia office confirmed the losses. Every gallon sold at this rate deepened the deficit. But the campaign pressed on for 6 months. Local press ran headlines on the price war. But behind the scenes, Standard's managers received explicit instructions to maintain sales below cost until the last independent faltered. Within half a year, the Carroll refinery was forced to sell, and the Philadelphia Oil Company entered liquidation. The evidence is unambiguous. This was not a one-time tactic, but a deliberate, repeatable pattern. By the end of 1880, the message was clear. Wherever Standard Oil faced resistance, the outcome could be engineered through the relentless application of financial muscle, not superior product or innovation. In July 1871, a confidential contract between Standard Oil and the Erie Railroad redefined the economics of oil transport in America. Buried in the legal language was a single clause. For every ton of oil shipped, Erie would quietly refund Standard Oil 5 cents, a sum never disclosed to the public or to rival shippers. The rebate was not a token gesture. It slashed Standard's freight costs by 42%, dropping the effective rate from 12 cents per barrel to just 7 cents per barrel. Every ledger entry in Rockefeller's books reflected this hidden advantage, turning what appeared to be loss-making sales into a sustainable engine of profit. But the scheme went further. The contract's drawback provision guaranteed Rockefeller a payment not only on his own shipments, but on every barrel his competitors sent down the same line. In effect, each rival's attempt to reach market paid tribute directly to Standard Oil. Erie executives, lured by the promise of consistent volume, became silent partners in Rockefeller's campaign. The rebate's mechanics, 5 cents per ton, credited quietly on monthly freight ledgers, created an invisible subsidy. The public rate sheets published by the railroad told one story. The private accounts told another. With this clandestine edge, Standard Oil could undercut any price, endure any price war, and still emerge with margins intact. The real contest was no longer about who could refine oil more efficiently, but who controlled the terms of trade itself. Between 1865 and 1870, Standard Oil's reach extended beyond the refinery gates. The company moved methodically, acquiring assets that would close every logistical gap between the oil fields and the final customer. In 1865, Standard purchased its first pipeline, a 3-mile stretch of iron pipe running from the Cuyahoga fields to the Cleveland refineries. The contract, filed in the Ohio Secretary of State's office, granted exclusive shipping rights and allowed Rockefeller to bypass the railroads entirely for key routes. By 1868, a purchase order for 150 tank cars ensured that Standard's oil would move in company-owned vessels, operated by crews on Standard's payroll and immune to the rate hikes that crippled rivals. The next year, an internal memo standardized the 42-gallon barrel, each one branded with the Standard Oil seal and manufactured in plants the company now controlled. Every barrel, every tank car, and every depot became a barrier to entry. By 1870, Standard operated 45 retail depots across Ohio and Pennsylvania, each selling kerosene at prices that no independent could match. Operations managers, acting on a steady stream of contracts and directives, enforced this system with clinical precision. Competitors found themselves locked out, unable to access pipelines, forced to pay inflated fees for barrels, and squeezed at every point of distribution. The logistical chokehold was total. The company's grip was not just on oil, but on the very infrastructure that moved it. The Hepburn Committee hearings of 1879 laid bare the machinery that shielded Standard Oil from public accountability. Transcripts from Albany record the company's counsel conceding the existence of confidential railroad rebates, payments described as critical to our competitive position. Legislators pressed for details, but answers arrived in the form of legal abstractions and evasions. Behind closed doors, Rockefeller's ledgers told a different story. $150,000 in donations flowed discreetly to key political campaigns and party committees, a sum recorded in the bank ledgers of the era and cross-referenced in the state's legislative registers. These funds helped soften the resolve of lawmakers tasked with investigating Standard's dominance. In 1882, the Standard Oil Trust Charter codified a new legal shell. 43 subsidiaries were pooled under a single board of trustees, each company retaining a separate name but ceding full operational control to the trust. The charter included a clause requiring every subsidiary to respond as one to any regulatory inquiry, rendering the group nearly impervious to state-level antitrust actions. For 3 decades, this structure insulated Standard Oil's monopoly from legal assault. Only in 1911 did the Supreme Court order the trust dissolved, fragmenting it into 34 successor firms. Yet the architecture of control, including political influence, legal unification, and strategic opacity, remained intact and was replicated in the very companies that would inherit Standard's legacy. The legal arsenal forged to confront monopoly in America began with the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. Its language was blunt. Every contract or combination in restraint of trade was declared illegal. Yet the law's reach was shaped by the courts. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil's trust structure and market practices constituted an unreasonable restraint of trade, ordering the company split into 34 separate entities. The remedy was structural, fragmentation rather than regulation, intended to restore competition by force. But the Sherman Act alone could not anticipate the subtlety of future monopolies. In 1914, Congress passed the Clayton Act, targeting mergers, price discrimination, and exclusive dealing, and established the Federal Trade Commission to enforce these prohibitions. Each statute added new tools, but the core logic remained: monopolistic conduct would be punished by breaking up the firm or forbidding its methods. Nearly a century later, the United States versus Microsoft case tested these statutes against a digital empire. The court found Microsoft had illegally maintained its dominance by tying its browser to its operating system. But the remedy stopped short of a breakup. Instead, behavioral constraints replaced structural solutions. Through each era, the law's power to contain monopoly has been measured not by the letter of the statute, but by the court's willingness to impose real remedies. The evolution from Standard Oil to Microsoft reveals both the strength and the limits of antitrust enforcement. Limits that would be tested again as new forms of concentrated power emerged in the digital age. Amazon's marketplace now accounts for over half of all US e-commerce sales, a dominance built not on invention, but on the willingness to sustain losses across entire product lines. Internal pricing memos, disclosed in the House Antitrust Report, spell out the intent. Absorb losses on high-volume items until third-party sellers exit, then reclaim margin once the field is clear. This echoes the logic of Standard Oil's price wars, transposed into the digital cart. Google's search engine, with a market share exceeding 90% worldwide, operates as the exclusive conduit for information. Department of Justice filings allege that Google's platform is engineered to favor its own services, for example, search, ads, and maps, while demoting or excluding rivals, a digital parallel to Rockefeller's control of pipelines and rail routes. Meta, through the acquisition of Instagram in 2012 and WhatsApp in 2014, neutralized emerging threats before they could grow into true competitors. The Federal Trade Commission's complaint describes a playbook of acquisition-driven consolidation, reminiscent of Standard Oil's absorption of rival refineries. Apple's App Store, responsible for more than 70% of global app distribution, enforces a 30% commission and bars alternative payment systems. The European Commission's 2021 decision found this structure forecloses competition, locking developers and users into a closed ecosystem, an unmistakable echo of the branded barrel and exclusive depot. Each of these firms has inherited the 4 mechanisms once honed in the oil fields and rail yards of the 19th century. The product has changed, from barrels to bytes, from kerosene to code. but the architecture of corporate power remains, refined and redeployed at a global scale. Today's tech giants do not innovate their way to dominance. They orchestrate it through control of platforms, data, and digital infrastructure, echoing Rockefeller's original blueprint. The product has changed, but the logic of monopoly remains intact. Power, not invention, defines the age. The playbook endures, only the arena is new.